Hi, everyone. This is YMP TV. And for those who've been following our series of podcasts, we've been interviewing mining executives, stakeholders in the mining industry, just to hear their thoughts on what's going on in the industry, how pandemic has affected them. And for the past weeks, I've been doing series with women in mining. And this week, we're lucky we have Lindiwe Nakedi, which is the owner and managing director of Gubhani Exploration. I hope I pronounce it right.
Good. Second time around.
Correct. Hi, Lindy. Thank you for doing this.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Bianca, for the invite. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll start with the topic that everyone has been talking about for the past weeks, months. It's COVID-19. So can you just tell us a bit more how COVID-19 has impacted the mining industry in Africa?
Yeah, sure. You know, I suppose for everybody, it almost became it was a lockdown, you know, it wasn't business as usual, you know, everything came to a standstill, basically. And that is very new, you know, for everybody. And usually then what comes with a standstill means we're not going to make any money, and there's huge changes, you know, and then that butterfly effect, you know, one ripple effect going all the way down to the man on the street, you know, and that's basically a huge impact that COVID-19 has had. But more specifically, I think, you know, for me, I'd like to bring it back home a little bit, you know, just to the experiences, the real experiences that we've had to face, you know, having to let people, or for ourselves, not to make any income. See, in South Africa, we're considered small, medium enterprises. You know, we're not as big as, you know, the major corporations. And so we are employing, you know, not that many people, and we are depending solely on operations to be continuing as usual. And funny enough, just this week, we had to have a supplier engagement meeting with our client, where he was telling us their challenges. You know, they were really telling us the fact that, look, some of our product goes to the export market, and we cannot send any of that, you know, to the export market because the ports are closed, you know, and they're not doing business with, you know, anybody outside of their own borders, which means that a bulk of their income, a bulk of the money that they have to now, you know, make, it comes to a halt, you know, and it puts a lot of pressure on them and their operations. And now they're bringing back the question to us as suppliers to say, what kind of, you know, assistance can you give us as well? Can you work on a sustainable type of relationship and, you know, possibly not have any profit making in the business, but rather think about sustainability, you know, and that can be a really big ask for small companies that are already depending on very little. And the profit margins are not even that big, you know, if you think about it, because often when you go into the negotiating table, for you to even get your foot into the door, you have to make certain concessions. You have to give, you know, discounts at word go. So already it's putting pressure on each and every part of that, that chain, you know, if I can put it that way, because the minute that happens, it means that I also then have to go back to my side of the business and say, where can I cut my costs? You know, and the bulk of my expenses are on the people. You know, they're on salaries, and you start seeing, where can I remove the fat? Okay, do I need this, you know, currently, or how can we then cut salaries and things like that? And it's actually something that's occurring in many companies, not even just the small companies. There's been a lot of layoffs, you know, a lot of people have lost their jobs, you know, so we're still lucky that we still have a contract that we can say, okay, there's work that can still be done, but it's a huge impact. You know, we're going to see much higher figures now when it comes to the percentage of people who are unemployed. And that then goes all the way to, what do people do when they're unemployed? How do they, you know, try to make a living, or how do they, you know, try to get money to take care of their families? You've got more crime, you've got more break-ins happening suddenly, you know, in the area where we live. So it's a huge impact, you know, on the lives of people who are already very stretched.
Yeah. And do you think the impact was different for women in mining?
Look, I mean, if I I did have a chat with some of the other women, you all women-owned businesses, and some of them, because we work in different areas. I mean, I work above ground. Exploration is very much you're on your own, on a site somewhere. So I'll tell you what the challenges are of an exploration project or exploration drilling project. But then some people own businesses where they're doing engineering work, support work on the mines themselves as contractors. And if they're working underground, operations had been shut down for some time. Because the challenge with that is that a lot of the times when you're going down shaft, you have to go into this lift. There's many of you. You can't just put half the workforce going down because you can't do the work with half the workforce. And so social distancing then, goes out the window if you want to continue that underground operation. So a lot of, some of the women that are, in business within the mining industry are hit hard by the fact that they can't go and work. If the lockdown rules are saying, look, you can only have 50 people congregating anywhere at any time or at any point, it means they can't work. So some of them, businesses are not getting any income at all. And, some might even be shutting down. So it's actually, I don't know if it's just for women. I can't say it's just exclusively women who are going through this. It's almost as if now we've been bundled up and we've become one. It's a whole society of one. Yes, our experiences in trying to get the work within the mining space are more challenged because sometimes they feel no credibility, but sometimes it's just biases. They'd rather give businesses to companies they've done business with, a lot longer. And most of the time, those are male-owned businesses. But I don't think COVID-19 or the effects of it are happening to us. Specifically, what we are experiencing is just, unique to women only. So I can't say this is specifically because we are women, but I know that it's the effects of COVID-19 all around.
Correct. Okay.
And they just create even more of a challenge when we've been so hard done by that we don't get the opportunities as much as anybody else does.
And I guess post COVID-19, whenever that happens, do you think the mining industry or mining companies will operate differently?
Look, already, I mean, we are seeing the difference now. It's almost like, I was chatting with my husband on this, that a lot of the times in the mining industry, we've stuck to the ways of when the mining industry began. And as time went on, we've only just plugged in different things. So environmentally focused now, and then now we're sustainability. Now we're looking at communities, but we've never really stopped and said, wait, does everything still work the way it should? Or are we just plugging in programs that are just costing us more and more money? Now it gives every other organization a chance to say, okay, let's start from ground zero and start seeing that, perfect, we need to be sustainable, we need to be environmentally friendly, we need to be thinking about equality when it comes to women and men within the workspace, and we need to be looking at our community engagement, and then build up the mining industry according to that basis, because all these other, like the way before was not necessarily working, because the plugins had loopholes somewhere, where you'd constantly find that, look, but this is now eating away at our profits, or this is now changing how we're supposed to be doing things, and we don't necessarily want to change. But now it's forcing us to now even adopt technology even more. Whereas before, you would talk to a geologist and say, look, I can give you results of what I'm doing downhole, as I'm drilling, and give you that information, and you don't have to come out to site. Now it's a little bit something more, receptive to, because of COVID-19, I don't necessarily want to have that much contact with people. Therefore, I'll stay in my office and I will gladly receive the data. So it is kind of shifting the mindsets. We've been very archaic for a long time, but right now we have an opportunity to adopt. So I think we're definitely going to operate completely differently, and at an even faster pace now, because we are forced to.
For sure.
Yeah. Mm.
And just to go back to women in mining, even though it's not, COVID-19 is not a women in mining specific problem, like it's affecting everyone, but do you still think that it will create more opportunities for an inclusive industry because of what's happening?
Look, I hope so.
Yeah.
When I was reading, there was an article I was reading just recently, you know, that I was talking about where the problem of not being able to reach, you know, that equality within the industry is coming from. And it's not necessarily because of, I'm just trying to remember, because it was a study that was done by Deloitte. And actually a friend of mine had sent me a link. But they were talking about how physical features or, you know, anything else that we might say, no, but then in the mining industry, you can't go and pick up this very heavy engineering industry. There's nothing, you know, it's not a place for women. But now that we've been faced with the situation where most of us are all working from home, you know, and it's not about physical attributes anymore. It's about the mind, you know, it's about what you have to offer. And it takes away, especially these screens and everything, they take away every other aspect of, but I'm dealing with a woman, you know, because on the other end, you're hearing a voice, I'm giving you the facts, I'm giving you the work that you're asking for. I'm giving you the data that you need so that work can be able to continue on the mine. And therefore, it shouldn't matter if I'm a man or a woman, you know, on the other end. So it's supposed to get better. But the one thing that I know we definitely need to be working on is our mindsets. Because for the longest time, I've always felt that it's the mindsets that we are dealing with. It's not anything else but mindset. Culturally, especially in our country where we come from, you know, on my side, I've got a young female geologist, right? Now we've got culture, we've also got ethnicity, we've got a whole lot of a mix in our country. So we have a young female Zulu geologist working with a Zulu, very technical old man with experience, not necessarily any other qualification. But you should see how those dynamics are still so difficult, because she still feels that she has to give a certain amount of respect to this old man. So even when she knows that something is not being done correctly, she will let him continue in that way, in that direction, because she's trying to be respectful to him. And I come onto site and I say, no. But can you see that operations are going, you know? So you cannot keep quiet when you see that something is going wrong just because he's older than you. And in your culture, you need to be respectful of this old man. Remember, we are all here. It's the workplace. You know, so it's the mindsets that we have to keep on working on constantly, you know, and not just on the male side, but also on the female side, because we've been socialized a certain way, therefore we still view things a certain way, and therefore when we come to the workplace, we still experience different things, because now all that comes flooding in and it interrupts what work's supposed to happen. So it's more the mindsets that each and every one of us probably still have to deal with, you know, those cultural things, the biases, as well as the socialization part of us. Yeah.
And I want to touch a bit more about your work. So I'm going to say it again. Hopefully I'll say it right. But Gubhani exploration
That's it.
is in South Africa, and it's 100% Black female-owned surface diamond drilling company.
That's it.
And so can you tell us a bit more about like the company and also how your adventure in mining started, I guess, like not just as a woman, but just in general, and your experience in a field mostly populated by male, and especially and like you at the C-suite. Well, yeah, because I've watched the conference where the voice of women in mining during COVID, and it wasn't populated and dominated by male, but it was populated by male, which I thought it was like brilliantly said. But it's also at the C-suite level, like at the ownership and I guess like CEO level, it's mostly male populated. So can you just tell us a bit more about your experience? I know I asked a lot during that short question, but
no problem. I hear you. I can hear you. So, you know, and my friend Ulebogeng Sinsu actually coined that that very awesome statement to say the mining industry is male populated, not dominated.
Correct.
And
I love this.
Yeah, she likes to say, what do they actually dominate? I'm like, okay. She's militant like that, and I love her. She's taught me a lot. But Gubhani exploration basically started in 2008. Yeah, in about 2008. And for me, though, before getting into Gubhani exploration, I was running a search and recruitment firm. So I've got a very humanities background, people's person, that's me. Did industrial psychology, and I have no idea how I landed there. but I married a geologist, and my interest in mining then, sort of grew from there. I would literally go and visit out at the sites because he was an exploration manager. And he also thought, look, this is a very lucrative business. We should get into that, And when I was done with the recruitment company and I felt that I wanted to, experience something different, I'm the kind of person who, I suppose I've always been an entrepreneur. I've worked literally for about 8 months or so, and, formal work. But most of it, I've been an entrepreneur almost all my life. And so I decided then, and at that time, because of what the country was trying to move, towards with regards to Black empowerment, to say, look, we need to empower the people so that they can also then start like almost trying to level out the playing fields, on the economic side of things. And so I felt that, and, as a Black woman, that was even more of a step forward when we are talking empowerment, because Black women are really overlooked, a lot of the times in these different communities. So I felt that, look, it's a step in the right direction, challenging as it might be. And I won't lie and say I came into that and, I was brilliant from word go. There was a lot to learn. And also the challenges of feeling like you are an outsider because you didn't study a mining qualification. So it was very hard, because you've got the imposter syndrome to deal with. You've got all this technical stuff to learn that you don't understand. And you've got, people thinking, but where are you going? Because this is no place for you, So, but my husband is a very supportive person. I don't want to lie. He's pro-women, not just his wife, but pro-women, because he knows that we all have abilities and we can gain a lot from each other. He always says, look, she's the brains behind the business. I just get the other stuff done, strategically so and everything. So I like the way he supports me. And so that's how then I started in exploration drilling. But it was a very tough road because getting equipment was just the hugest hurdle. I mean, firstly, no financial institutions are willing to finance an exploration project. And like I was actually alluding to right at the beginning of this, exploration is one of those things that mining companies will only do when all things are working well, and then they feel, look, we need to see what else is on our other properties. We need to quantify and qualify what's there, because now we might just possibly be moving into that drilling. So it's got nothing to do with production. And so anytime there's a change in the industry, like, mining is very cyclical. There are times when it's up and there are times when it's down. And when it's down, exploration is one of the things that gets put off. And so there won't be any drilling done. So you stand the chance of possibly not making any money at all at some point, in some part of that season or that cycle. So that's basically some of the challenges about, exploration. And so coming into it then, trying to get financing for something like that was almost impossible. Literally, Gubhani has managed to build itself up from the ground up. And with savings, we firstly had to start subcontracting. So anytime we get work, we'd look for another, well-established drilling company, partner with them so that they can assist us to get the work done. And once that is done, whatever we make from that, we put it aside so that we can be able to start building up on our own muscle and our own equipment. And getting work was also very challenging because when you don't seem like you've got capacity for the amount of work that the mining companies have, then they shy away from using you. They'd rather go and find somebody who's going to give them the equipment that they need at the time that they need it, so that the drilling program can happen within their time frame. So those were sort of like the very challenging things. And anytime another woman would say to me, how can I come into this industry? And I'm like, oh, I would love for you to be there too. No, it's going to be a serious fight, and you have to push through every single one of those challenges. And it's possible, it is possible. I mean, here I am, it's possible. So I think our biggest turning point was in about 2014, 2015, when we were able to purchase secondhand rigs, from a company that was letting go of some of their stuff. And finally, you started seeing better profits, because now you own the equipment. And once you own the equipment, you can literally, the sky is the limit, or beyond even. And so that's how we started building ourselves up from old rigs, 2 old rigs, working on a site, out in Mpumalanga on Gubhani, a nickel mine. And that was exciting, just to see that build up. And then suddenly we could go and buy a brand new rig, which means you've got less breakdowns on site, so we've literally then, worked. Our first drilling program was for an Australian company. They were called in the beginning Coal of Africa. They were called Coal of Africa. And the only reason or how we got into that opportunity is because they said, okay, our current drilling contractor is struggling to get a certain size of core, what is it called? Sorry, I'm trying to think. The word is just gone. The word is just gone. But the core barrels that they needed, the size of, what is it? Rod. Yeah, the size of drill rod that they needed was quite a big size. It's called T6146 because they needed those really huge samples of their coal. And we said, okay, if we can get that equipment in, will you give us a chance on that contract? And they said, let's see if you can. And immediately we just thought, we're going to take all the money we have just to make sure that this, we took whatever we could find, got that the core rod to be shipped down to us so that we can have it at the time that the client needed it to be there. And we were given that job. Oh. And that was like the biggest job we ever had right at the beginning, But then the mining industry then hit a slump, and from about 2010 all the way to about 2012, 2013, it was a struggle. But eventually we came back up again, drilling from Gubhani mine, nickel mine, and then eventually then getting a 3-year contract with South 32. And that's where we've had like the greatest learning, because the minute you work for a much bigger, giant of a mining company, you realize just how much you don't know. And in terms of compliance, and putting together your standard operating procedures, because they want to see everything, from your risk assessments to how you are going to set up your site, and that was a learning curve for us. Sometimes it felt like, oh, but they were asking for too much, because we spent literally almost millions before starting, about $1 million plus that we spent before starting on that site. But it was worth it, because here we are, they've just extended the contract and we continue working. And we're very grateful actually for companies like that are willing to give you a chance, when the thought or the mindset is that they usually mess up, So we've been very grateful with this journey. But we now own our equipment and none of it is financed. I suppose that's a blessing in disguise as well, because even when the effects of COVID hit, that you're not going to lose your fleet, you're not going to lose your equipment, because you had to literally pay it off. So I think for me, that's a blessing, that I know that the effects are not going to necessarily affect you that much, where you have to let go of things, or you can't pay your creditors. So yeah, Gubhani has grown. We've been around now for, I think this year in October, we'll be celebrating 12 years, if I'm not wrong. And it's growing, like I said, now I'm finally starting to get, I'm trying to get more women in here, even if it's in my company. But it is a challenge because they work out on site and not everybody wants to be out on site. People just want to be in the offices. And sometimes that's what I encourage young people, that look, come and see, what it's about before you think you're studying for something. Come and understand, that it has to be for someone who really loves it. It has to be for someone who wants to be in the outdoors, who's adventurous, who's strong as well. You can fight for yourself, you can stand up for yourself, because none of the guys are going to make it easy for you, and even if it's because you're a woman, but if they're challenging your knowledge, or they're challenging what you bring to the table, your innovation, your ideas, then come guns blazing, and show them what works. So yeah, I probably said more than I should have.
No, that's perfect. But it brings us to like our next question, because I want to tie it back to the women in mining, like your experience, and I guess your journey, because you served as the chairperson of Women in Mining in South Africa in 2017, 2018. And then you made the Women in Mining UK's 2018 list of Global Inspirational Women in Mining. So how do you think women in mining should challenge the status quo, or like to ensure more gender equality? And I guess like what needs to change, or like the concrete steps leaders should take in the industry to change that?
Right. So, because we know that it's challenging, we have to be able to advise whoever wants to go all the way up to the top, to management, to the leadership roles, that it's okay to get dirty in the operations, because that's how you build your credibility. It's okay to rough it up, because you are going to rough it up. I was talking to one geologist who was like, oh my goodness, I got thrown out in the bundu somewhere. We call it the bundus, when you end up in the in like
bushes.
the bush, and you're all by yourself, no other woman, just you. And it means you're going to literally have to say, guys, can I please have my own toilet here, because it will be more hygienic for me. But it's funny that even though we've had so many women already within the industry, I mean, for the past it's been over 10 years, but we're still struggling with simple things like not having ablution blocks that are, better suited for women. Some women still don't have the right protective wear, that literally, I mean, you can't wear a whole overall, because now when I go to the toilet, then I have to remove the whole thing. So just things like that, where we still have to be able to say, look, this is not working for me, and show you, or show the men at least that we have to deal with, who have to make the decisions, the logic, because we are very different in terms of how we do things in our minds. So we constantly have to show logic, give the facts. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be emotional, because I think everybody has emotions. I don't think it's unique to just women to be emotional. And so we can't say, oh my gosh, there they go again, women are so emotional. No, we are just like anybody else, So for us, it's to be clear about what we are trying to achieve. And if I'm starting out my journey in a certain career, then I need to know what I'm going in there for, which is why Women in Mining South Africa has a program where we try to expose young people in high school already, although it must even start with junior school, where kids know what the mining industry is all about, where they know the different levels within mining, where they know the different roles you can play in mining. Some of us still had, when we were still growing up, we thought it's just underground. You go underground, you've got this light, and that's all that mining is. But it's so broad, so complex and so exciting. And we need to start teaching that, but then also show exactly the kind of tenacity you must have to be able to get through each and every one of those stages. Our chairperson currently Tabile Magala, is a mining engineer. But she's an elegant, very stunning woman, right? But when it comes to getting the job done, she's not a mining executive now for no reason. She literally had to work through the ranks, right from the operational stages where you are underground and you're working with different types of people and personalities all the way to those offices. So we as women have to be willing to wait it out, I think also maybe it might just be an issue with the different types of generations that we have now. Millennials expect things a lot easier, quicker, why aren't we doing this like this instead of like that? And in the mining industry, that problem of, no, we've always done it like this, and this is how it's going to be done, it is a problem. That's why we call it a cake, because when you move on, when we move on with the times and we realize that, but did we really have to do it like that? Why don't we just change and do it like this, So I think it's a meeting point, that midpoint, where it's not just the work of the millennials to also just wait it out and understand that this is how the mining industry is, but also the mining industry, those professionals who have been there for long enough need to be able to say, but hey, maybe there's a way to do this a little bit differently. So young people need to be able to be strong enough to stick around, because you have to go through the operations. You have to get through the mud. You have to be on site. You have to see what's happening. You can never learn, even for me, managing a drilling company, I cannot remote manage the company. Although now I've got my project managers and everything, but I still have to be on site to see if somebody says, but we've got a problem with our signboards, or we've got a problem with how we lay out our core, or, that new process that you came up with for us to put things on a cradle and, take pictures of the core. We're having a problem because we don't know where to put them. Now I can understand exactly what they mean because I know how it's all set up. I know how it's supposed to work. I can bring about the changes with their suggestions. So it's good for us to be able to work together in that way, but to go down and get dirty and then work our way through the ranks. But then also with leadership, management, senior management, they need to start identifying or being comfortable with identifying the talent and then developing it. And then be willing to have somebody monitor that when we are developing somebody, where's the plan going forward? Because sometimes we put people on programs, but we are not measuring or even looking at where they're going to end up. And some of these programs, there's no measurement of success. There's no tracking of movement. So we need to connect all the dots along the line of ensuring that we are going to have leaders in the future. Because then you won't get to a point where you say, but there are no women to put up onto that leadership board or, that C-suite. We don't have them. But if you took the time to identify, right from the grassroots, build your own timber, or what is it? Yeah, grow your own timber. Make sure that those young people who are coming in with great marks, who are doing great in varsity, doing great in high school, and then develop them all through the line. Then you'll have a better success rate, have mentors, have sponsors, people who speak up for them to say, this is who I've identified, and I'd like us to look at them, going throughout the process. So yeah, I've got a lot of ideas.
Oh, that's very good.
Implementation is hard. Yeah.
And I think it ties it into like the last question I wanted to ask you, but I'll still ask it anyways. If you have any other advice, like as a mining executive, what advice would you give to like other female, I guess, like professional that are starting their career in this period, a bit of crisis, and to those who are considering joining, but maybe hesitant?
Yeah. Sure. Look, I think for the executive, the woman on the decision making, or who has the power to make a decision, to not be afraid to make certain decisions. Sometimes you find that a lot of women who are on the operations, by the cold face, who are engineers or electrical engineers or other types of people within the workforce, They feel that, but we are not seen, because we're not in the office, we are not seen. And if we can create, I think that these smaller organizations that we are creating now on different mines. So now you're finding that you'll have a women in mining org within company X. And those women in mining organizations then have a role to play in saying, can we assist you, HR, in identifying the women who literally want to be taken up through certain, levels? Can we assist you to identify leaders who are emerging within this group of women that we get to work with, that we get to see, that we get to know, and then work that through the ranks? And the women who are then in positions that can make the decisions, or in positions that can make decisions, can start saying, this is what I'm putting forward. Here's a suggestion that I'm putting forward, and not be afraid to bring those suggestions to the fore. Sometimes I feel that when you are in, like, I know that I've never been in a corporate environment. I've always been on my own. But I feel that sometimes it's very difficult if there's only one woman on an executive team, and for her to affect change, it might not necessarily be fair of us to expect them to bulldoze, because we don't know that person's personality. We are not the same. She's not maybe the type of person who's willing to speak up on certain things. She's probably thinking, let me just get my work done, and we don't know also the challenges that they face, because maybe they do try to voice out, but then they get closed off, or then they don't get called for certain meetings. And so we don't know the kind of challenges that those women are facing. So I think some kind of empathy and understanding from our side as well, who are saying, but you should be, enforcing this kind of change, and you should be doing this. But then also for them to start saying, but we need to have more support at this level, therefore let us identify more women. Be willing to be the driver of that change. Be willing to be, even if you're not a very militant person, but then be willing to say, look, I think this might just help us, if we do it in this way. Make those suggestions, speak up, because sometimes we are even too afraid to speak up. Like all those things that I spoke about, socialization, culture, all of those things. Now we need to start saying, but if I'm in this position and I'm trying to make a change for everybody else, I need to be able to speak up. I need to be able to grow these competencies so that I know I'm making a difference in my position or in my role. And then with the young people, then, they should be willing to listen and learn from other people. Sometimes we think we know.
Very true.
Sometimes we think we know, and you do know. There's absolutely nothing wrong with knowing, and you do know, but then you must be willing to learn from other people. Because how I feel I've managed to get to the point where I'm at is that when an engineer would come onto my site and say, no, but then there's a problem with this, how this seat on this rig is, it's not, do you know ergonomics? And then you want to just give them that opportunity. Yes, no, go ahead and tell me what ergonomics, are, because of health and safety reasons, that you need to now consider all these things that the engineer wants you to consider. But for me to be able to go back then and say, look, you know what, maybe you can take me through how you understand this to actually work. I may know my things the way I know them, because I'm on my site for however long and I know what's happening there. But then if I start showing somebody else that I'm willing to learn from them, do you know how much that literally grows your network? Because now that person is going to be in favor of you. If anything comes up, they'll be saying, wait, I want to go and call Lindy quickly because I know she's going to hear this, or she's going to want to know this. And if you can be that adaptable, yes, I call it adaptability, being malleable, then more people will be willing to work with you. Sometimes you find that we come into the workplace already, I feel like, okay, I'm a woman and I know they're going to treat me like this. So you come already guards up. You constantly want to look like, you constantly want to sound like you're the boss, but you don't have to always be that way. You can actually gain favor and gain a lot of friends just by being willing to learn, and that's the one major thing, showing respect to other people, showing respect to people who don't have the qualification that you have, because maybe their experience can teach you something. So it's just that type of adaptability, you know, that a person must be able to have when they're going to work with a plethora of personalities, you know, that you're going to meet with, you know, not just on the mining, you know, industry, not just on mining sites, but every business, really. I think you need to be a kind of person who's respectful, who's willing to learn from other people and give credit, you know, when credit is due somewhere, you know. So yeah, I think that's, hopefully I've answered your question.
Very well said. No, very, very well said. I think it was super interesting and informative as a discussion. So thank you so much, Lindy, for taking the time. Like, we
It's
really
a pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. And I like the work that you're doing. We need more young people being engaged, you know, just to give them the information that they need, so that they're well informed whenever they're making their decisions, you know. And this industry is actually very exciting. And I think that the future is even, you know, even better, because in our country, we haven't yet discovered more minerals. I mean, we are mining what we know, but what is it that we don't know that's still possibly out there? And we have to encourage more people to be willing to go out there and say, look, I'm going to go and find out. You know, exploration is very important, you know, so we need to see what else can come out of all of that, you know. So yeah.
That's ending it on a good note. Thank you so much, Lindy. And take care.
Thank you very much. You must keep well.